experienced a tension headache after a really stressful day, or noticed that you're achy and sore after a bad night of sleep. Pain is not so straightforward as cutting your knee, you heal from that cut, and then the pain goes away. Sometimes the pain can come and go. Sometimes the pain can return even though you're still healing properly. My name is Dr. Robin Armstrong. I'm a chiropractor at Willowbrook Chiropractic in Langley, and today I'm going to talk about the science of pain. So pain is processed by our nervous system. So we have our central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord. And then we have our peripheral nervous system, which are the nerves that go out to our arms and our legs, to our skin, to our organs. And they send messages back and forth through neurons. And that's where it starts to get complicated, because when you get a message from your peripheral nervous system back up to your central nervous system, your brain can interpret that sensation in a number of ways. So, for example, it's the first time that you've worked out and you're doing bicep curls, and you might feel feelings like a burning, maybe even a tearing, a really strong increase in tension or pressure. And so your brain has to decide, is this an emergency? Are those danger signals? Should we stop? And if you've never felt those things before, then you might stop. Whereas someone who has exercised before, they interpret that as, I'm getting stronger. This is how I know it's working. This is a positive thing. So they might continue and not have any feeling of pain per se. They interpret that in a very different way. So we know that individual experiences of pain are very different. And part of that is based on adverse life experiences. So we know that how many negative life experiences you've had in your life is going to increase your pain. So we're talking about things like divorce in the home, being a survivor of abuse or violence, having a family member or yourself suffering from addiction. These things are going to impact your experience of pain and make them greater. And the thing is, with our brain, it processes pain in the same areas that it processes thoughts and emotions and experiences. So your experience is going to be very different than mine because we have different things going on in our brain and we've had different life experiences. We also know that how much you feel you can control your pain tells us what your experience of pain is going to be. So the more in control you feel of your pain, then the less painful it is. So if you can figure out ways to control certain aspects of your pain, that might actually decrease your pain overall. So for instance, if you know that you can sit for about 30 minutes, but then your back starts to get achy and sore, and then by the time you get to 60 minutes, you are dying and it's very sore, and that might last for a few hours. Well, what if you were to say, okay, I'm not going to fight this. I know I can sit for 30 minutes, and then I'm going to get up and I'm going to move around and I'm going to reset. So you don't give your body that opportunity to get into the really painful stage. As much as you'd really like to be able to sit for 60 minutes and it's inconvenient, taking that control back, that power back, and then stopping that pain cycle from beginning. We also know that stress can have a really strong impact on our experience of pain. So the higher our stress, the more our pain is going to be. And this is partly related to our fight or flight response. So when there's a stressful experience, our fight or flight part of our nervous system turns on and releases a few hormones. At first, adrenaline. That's usually for that sudden increase in stress. And then there's a second round of hormones called cortisol. And that is helpful if you still need to keep going in that situation. But a lot of times what happens is that cortisol stays around for days or weeks, and it starts to cause problems. So it can actually increase the inflammation in your body and decrease the tissue healing. It also impacts things like your blood pressure, your ability to process sugar from food, and it disrupts your sleep-wake cycle. And we know that if you have poor sleep, then your experience of pain increases as well. We also want to make sure that you are managing things like anxiety or depression, because people with anxiety or depression have a greater experience of pain. And people who generally experience more negative emotions, if you're angry, if you're frustrated, if you're really wishing that this pain wasn't there and it wasn't interrupting your life so much, those negative emotions actually increase your experience of pain. Of course, it's valid to feel all those things, but it's also helpful to acknowledge, okay, the more upset and angry and frustrated I get, the more my pain is going to be. So having a way to manage those feelings is important as well. Now, of course, pain is a very complex experience, as you're probably coming to see right now. So what are some of the takeaways that we can do? Well, you can think about reframing painful sensations, just like you would in the gym. That burning or pain, is that actually making your injury worse, or is it something that you can tolerate? Try to reframe that feeling. What can you control about your painful situation? Are there certain ways that you can behave that brings control and that you know that you can keep that pain under control? It's not something that you're afraid of and hoping is not going to come on today. You know there's a plan in place to keep that pain under control. Of course, you can get your injury treated and assessed. If you want to book online with us, you can book online at willowbrookchiropractic.com. And you can also return to exercise gradually. We don't want to be afraid of movements that caused pain in the past, because now that you're healing, those movements aren't so scary anymore. And they're not always a dangerous movement, even though when you were in a really painful place, they caused pain. So it's important to reintroduce activity and exercise gradually so that you don't develop a fear of certain movements. If you have any questions about what I've talked about here today, please feel free to ask myself, Dr. Robin Armstrong, or Dr. Jody Freedman. We're always happy to help.